Now, I've been, oh yeah, it's the 6th of August 2026, and I'm going to talk about batteries or energy, electricity storage. I did the other video on making electricity, but the sun doesn't shine at night, so you have to store the energy, and we do that in we use batteries and other ways. And I want to talk about new developments, and I've been looking on YouTube and watching documentaries, and there's some really exciting stuff out there, and we could do it. I keep saying, if we didn't buy assets, if we invested 90% of our profits in renewable cheap energy and renewable materials and research and development and building new facilities, then we could all be rich. Because the oil is keeping us in the bottle. It's strangling our economy, because it's taking all the money away from the companies. So we need to get out from under that weight. And so we make renewable cheap electricity, and now renewable cheap ways of storing that electricity so we can, have a light at night. Now, there's some really exciting stuff. Of course, what you hear about are batteries and lithium-ion batteries and sodium-ion batteries, and right now they're the quick fix, and they're quick to load and quick to unload. So on the short term, like within the 24-hour cycle, it's fine. And for an electric car, which you run on a 24-hour cycle, it's fine. But you can't run cities on large batteries because it's based on chemical reactions, and the materials you need to build these batteries, you need a lot of fossil fuels to get the materials, and then you need a lot of fossil fuels to build the batteries. So a battery might run for 20 years before you have a fossil fuel gain on that. There's so much fossil fuel going into the materials and making of these batteries, and they have such a short lifespan that it would be, in fact, cheaper, and you would use less fossil fuel for the same amount of electricity if you just burn the gas in an old-fashioned electricity plant. So the batteries we have today, the chemical batteries, have a niche, a small area in which they're practical, but not in the long run and not for everything. So, but there's some exciting things like gravity batteries, and you sort of go, huh? What? Yeah. Right. Remember how I told you that you make electricity by turning a stick, and the stick has a magnet on it, and when the magnet turns inside a copper coil, it produces electricity. So here you go. And it works the other way around. In an electromotor, you put the electricity in, it turns the magnet, which in turn turns the stick, and a moving stick is, well, you can attach any kind of machine on it or a wheel to make your car move. Anyway, so here we go. And we're again, when you're talking about batteries, apart from the chemical reactions, like I explained to you in the fuel cell motors, system, a battery in a way is a fuel cell. You put the electricity in, it makes a certain chemical, and then when you put the chemical, you separate a certain chemical, and when you put the chemicals together again, it gives a reaction which generates electricity. So it's a storage. But the turning stick in a way. So the whole point is turning the stick or generating electricity through a chemical way. Now, lithium ion, those are chemical reactions like a fuel cell. But a gravity battery is based on turning the stick. So what you do, you take an old-fashioned well, and you have a turning stick at the top, and there's a rope which turns around the stick, and it has a bucket. And then you have you turn the stick with a handle. And you turn the stick with the handle, and the rope unwinds, and the bucket goes down, and then the bucket takes the water, and you turn the stick the other way, and the rope turns around, winds itself up, and the bucket goes up, and you have your water. But if you don't think about the water, if you replace the water with a concrete block or a really big stone or piece of rock from a couple of tons, and you make a really big stick and a really heavy-duty rope, then basically what you do is when you have electricity, you turn the handle and you turn the handle, which winds the rope, which raises the piece of rock. So that is how you put the electricity in. You turn the handle, the electromotor turns the handle, which turns the stick, which winds the rope, which lifts the rock. And then at night, you simply turn the whole thing around with some gears and brakes and stuff. Of course, you don't want it to fall down. You want it to slowly unwind, like a clock, like the weight of a clock. You want to slowly unwind, and as the big rock, the weight of the big rock pulls the rope down, the rope unwinds and turns the stick. And there we go again. The stick turns the magnet, and the magnet turns inside the copper coil, and that produces electricity. So any battery, you can have mechanical batteries that are based on turning the stick. Yeah, and when you think about it, it's really very... and then you go, well, I don't want to dig a well. Well, we have plenty of holes in the ground. We call them mines. And we have plenty of mines which we're not using anymore. And they're all, industrial complexes with buildings and all kinds of stuff. And it is attached to the power grid, and it has all kinds of generators. And so basically, if you just lowered a piece of rock on a string down a mine shaft, that will store and generate electricity. Now, in reality, it's a lot more complicated than that, because in mines, especially old mines, there's all kinds of problems you can run into. So it's a gamble, but it's a promising gamble. And we already have these industrial complexes. And these old mines actually use a lot of money because we need to keep pumping the water out. What people don't realize is that when you close a mine, you just, don't just close the door. You will have to pump out the water in all perpetuity for thousands of years, because if it fills up with water, the whole surrounding area is going to collapse. So actually, old mines are causing earthquakes and subsidence of all kinds of areas, and destroying roads and buildings, etc. So actually, old mines cost money because you have to keep pumping the water out and keeping the electricity for the pumps, etc., etc. So if we could make them profitable by turning them into batteries, that would be great. And they already have generators and connection to the grid. But there are all kinds of other ways in which we can use gravity, because they've been like a child game, and they build a tower and then they lift concrete blocks and put one concrete block on top of the other when the sun is shining, and then lower the blocks again when at night, because all you have to do is turn the stick. And they're even thinking about, if you have a really big block on wheels and you have sort of a hill, during the day you can lower, you can pull up the block up the hill, and then in the night you can turn the stick again by letting the block go down. So actually, gravity batteries are wonderful low-tech ways of generating electricity and storing electricity. Only problem is you still need the copper and the magnet, and that in the end is a problem. But we have a lot of power plants who already have all these turbines and copper coils and magnets. So if we could reuse a lot of our stuff and change them from burning fossil fuels to using blocks of concrete or other stuff, that will be a really, really great advantage. So again, we need to be smart. And then there, of course, like I said, you need to make the turbines turn to make the stick turn. You can do that in tides, inside rivers, anything that can make the blades turn is fine. And then to make the blades turn with air, and they already built a couple of prototypes. So in the desert or someplace hot, or where it's very hot during the day and very cold during the night, you build this big tower, and you can build it with concrete, which is not CO2, but you could build it with other materials like mud. All you need to do is build some kind of tower where there are holes at the bottom, and at the top you have blades. You have pipes with blades. And during the day, when it heats up the air, the hole sucks up the hot air. The hot air rises. It turns the blades, which turns the stick, which turns the magnet, which inside the coil makes you electricity. So, and it has almost no moving parts apart from the blades, the stick, and the magnet. And apart from that, nothing's moving. And you have to boil water, and you don't have any materials. You just have build a tower. Build the installation, and it's really so there are many ways of storing energy, and there are many ways of using different geographical and climate and geo situation, and use different methods in different places. So you could build a tower, and you can use solar, and etc., etc. Actually, the tower is a way of creating energy, not a way of storing energy. Sorry about that. And then you have geothermal, where the heat, the steam is coming out of the ground in Iceland, for instance, where you can use that. And I bought up this thing to build our data centers near the North Pole, in Greenland or Canada or Norway, any place really, really cold, because most of the energy we use in data centers is for cooling. So the logical place, and the most and which is still accessible for maintenance and wiring, is to build them on the North Pole. Antarctica has some logistical problems with the data lines and such. So I'm not saying Antarctica. It's too isolated, but like Lapland, northern Norway, or parts of Greenland, or northern Canada, that is some place where you can attach it to the electricity and the data center grids. It's great. And if it gets hot, you open the door. They're thinking about building data centers in space because space is cold. But hey, how about the North Pole? That's pretty cold. And so, yeah, if we would just use our brains and get together, and I still believe we should build this website where people can post a problem and post solutions to problems. So we can use the creativity and the intelligence and the great ideas of all the people on the whole planet, whoever has access to internet, upload the solution, or a part of the solution, or your ideas on how to fix problems, technical problems. So we're relying on a handful of universities. Well, in the history of humanity, there have been a lot of inventions just by people at home, or farmers, or, not people at universities. A lot of ordinary people have created wonderful inventions and solutions to problems. And some guy who had diabetes built a diabetes pump in his garage, and it's this big, and you wear it on your belt, and you never have to measure and inject yourself again. It is like an external organ which makes your insulin level stable. And that was just an ordinary guy in his garage. There's so many ordinary guys in garages who have ideas of great, but you never hear of them because they're somewhere far away, and nobody gives a shit. And there's no way they can publish in a scientific magazine or anything else. And if they want to do a patent, they might have to spend a lot of money on buying the patent, and they're not going to do that. So there are millions, billions of people on this planet with great solutions to millions of problems. Build this website, invite everybody to post a problem and post a solution, and then all kinds of companies and universities can check out these websites and pick a problem and a solution and go build the factory or whatever. So we're not using our human potential, and the way to do that is to use the internet. That's what it's for. And the internet is a wonderful thing in distributing information and gathering information and sharing information, and we're not using our potential. So somebody, please, or many people, get the server space, build the websites, build them in every country, in every language, and allow the whole world access to all this knowledge. And maybe you won't get paid, and you won't get a payday for your invention. But we need to get rid of patents and copyright anyway. But we could, make some kind of thingy on the website that you sign it with your name, and if somebody uses your solution or your idea, that they give you part of the profit. We can fix that. We can fix anything if we put our minds to it. So the wonderful battery stuff and wonderful electricity stuff, and then the last element of electricity is transportation. Now, of course, the solution would be if we could figure out what Tesla already figured out 100 years ago, how to transport energy through the air, through the earth, through the ground, and without hurting anybody and without building more than a few towers. Even after 100 years, we haven't figured out what Tesla figured out. But there are a lot of interim solutions, like using right now we're using AC/DC current to transport, but we can use monocurrents, like Edison proposed, in big cables which are well insulated over long distances, and use AC/DC on short distances. But there's some exciting stuff where they are transporting energy, electricity on a beam of light, on a laser, and they've transported it up in the air, or across large distances, and recharging drones a few kilometers away with light beams, with laser beams. So actually, we are working on the transportation issues, because transportation and the transformation hubs, because you have to keep accelerating and pushing the current. And it's a lot of infrastructure, and it's very expensive, and it uses a lot of precious materials and materials which we're running out of. So transportation of energy is an issue, but we also have to be thinking about creating low-tech, local sources of electricity and warmth, because we don't need electricity to heat our houses, we need warmth. So they're thinking about sand batteries, actually where you put the warmth into a hole in the ground filled with sand. You make a container with sand, you heat up the sand, and a sand can get a few thousand degrees hot until it turns into glass. But before it does that, you can heat a couple of thousand. So in the summer, when the solar panels have a surplus, you heat the sand with wires. And then in the winter, because it's in the ground and it's well insulated, the sand stays hot. And in the winter, you open the water pipes which run around the sand, and the sand heats the water, and you have heating and warm water and all that. And it has very little moving parts, and you're not transforming energy into heat and electricity into heat and heat into electricity. You're just storing heat. And then putting the heat in your house. That's a lot simpler, and you don't need all those copper wires. So there's some exciting stuff happening, and we can fix this. We can fix this easy. We're so smart, and we have so much profit. We're so rich. We have so much profit from our companies. If we could just stop buying assets and force the companies to not, or convince companies not to buy back their stock and their shares, but to invest that money into R&D, so the company will be even more profitable in the future, because cheap, renewable, readily available in large quantities, electricity, warmth, and materials, that is going to explode the world's economy. And that is going to give us prosperity beyond our dreams. We could be so rich and have so many resources at our disposal, and so much electricity and AI and data centers, and if we could just have the cheap renewable energy, and for that we need to invest it. Now, the energy transition is not a tearful goodbye from oil and gas. It's a liberation. It's a liberation from the oil companies who are strangling us and keeping us poor. And exploding our economy all across the world and bringing prosperity to the whole world. So, get our heads together, build a site on the internet, invite everybody to give their ideas, and support local projects and big research and small research, and get this thing done. We can do it. We're humans. We put a man on Mars. We invented the iPhone. We can do this. We can do this. I'm really excited and positive about the future.